Welcome back to the third and final session of the JA Careers and Communication Program. Today we are going to talk about the process of getting a job, and along with their volunteer guide, we have a student materials packet this time that the students are going to use as we walk through this session. So you want to hand that out at the beginning of your time together. If you haven't already, asked the students throughout your visits about if any of them have had a job or what their job is, please encourage them to share their personal real experiences throughout this session. First of all, step one, if you want a job, you have to identify what the opportunities are. So you're just going to allow them to do kind of an out loud popcorn brainstorm about how do you find out about all of the jobs that are out there. They're going to throw out the obvious things like help wanted signs, billboards, TV, radio ads, newspapers. But if they don't shout it out, please make sure that you talk a lot about word of mouth and connections. We know that in the real world, that is oftentimes where the most impact comes. It's word of mouth, personal connections, etc. So talk a little bit about that. Again, some of these are going to be really short and then others are going to be expounded on. The second step is all about indicating that you're interested for the job. So first you identify it, then you have to indicate you're interested. So again, brainstorm with the students and get them to talk and think about what is the items usually needed. Sometimes there's an application, usually there is a resume involved, sometimes a cover letter. So again, different industries are looking for different things, but you have the opportunity to kind of showcase and talk about them. If you feel comfortable, bring in your resume, talk to the students about what you display on your resume, etc. Some people are big on cover letters, others aren't. Some, statistics are showing people are going away from it. Other industries really like the cover letter because it explains the why, right? So we all have different backgrounds, but consider that. One thing JA has provided is what's called the Breg Sheet. And so you're going to notice on their worksheet that there is a short Breg Sheet that they can just take a few minutes to start thinking about what are the elements that they would put into a resume or into an application. So we want them to just do a little bit of self-reflection. So give them, again, we don't have a ton of time. They're not going to complete it fully, but give them 90 seconds to on their own brainstorm what are some of the things that they could showcase, and then pause for just a moment and allow a couple of the students to shout out some of the elements that they wrote down. Again, you're not going to get through all of it. We don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but we really want them to start thinking about what are those extracurricular activities? What are those soft skills that they've displayed in some area that could be transferred to a resume or to the application process? From there, we're going to talk about, hopefully, once you indicate interest, you're going to get an interview. That's like typically the next step. And so what you want to do is you then need to prepare for the interview. We don't want them just to walk into the interview before we get to step 4. We need to prepare for it. So JA has provided a couple elements for them to consider. So we want you to spend about 15 minutes talking about this prepare for the interview section. The first thing we've provided are some interview etiquettes or do's and don'ts. And so you can talk through those and really encourage the students to practice, right? So optimally, they'd practice interview questions with a friend, a sibling, a parent. But if they don't have somebody to role play with, encourage them to actually talk out loud, look in front of a mirror, go into their room, etc., and hear themselves answer, because that's going to help build their confidence. Also, have them Google or web search common interview questions, for their specific industry, because a lot of times they can find some really great opportunities. You're going to notice that we've provided a few other elements right inside their packet. So one of them is to get them to think about how oftentimes interview questions are targeted to a specific industry. So you don't need to really do anything with this. Bring this to their attention, maybe highlight a couple of them, but we've provided them what are 4 main interview questions that somebody in a daycare center would ask versus a restaurant versus a pet store salesperson. Get them to think about those different questions and get them to think about when they're interviewing for a job, they really need to be thinking about those skills and attributes that that specific position is going to be looking for. Then we have a soft skills assessment. And again, if you have taught the Legacy JA Careers program, this is something that we retained from there. In the second session, you really focused on soft skills, specifically problem solving and teamwork collaboration. But there are so many other soft skills out there. So we want you to take a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, to actually allow the students to fill out this assessment. What they're going to do is they're going to ask themselves, I have a strong work ethic, even when no one is looking over my shoulder to be sure I'm doing the right thing. Okay, think about that. Be honest with yourself. Is that a strength, a weakness, or are you uncertain? So have them check that box. And then the key to this specific activity is to have them record an example of when they've demonstrated that skill. So if they say it's a strength, give me a specific example that showcases it, okay? Or what are some things that they could do to possibly strengthen it? Okay, so whether or not they pick strength, weakness, or uncertain, they can put something in that final box. They might not get through all of this, but really encourage them, give them a solid 3 to 5 minutes to fill this out, because this can be such a valuable takeaway. And again, they can keep this and do more after their session if they don't get it all done. At the end of that 3 to 5 minutes, pause and have a couple of the students share. I always like to highlight strengths for this one. So I say, who's willing to share a strength with me? Somebody will shout it out. And then what you really want to focus on is the prove it, right? What did they write down in that specific example on that right-hand side, so that you can really emphasize those are transferable skills. And that's something we haven't really talked about. We have technical skills, soft skills, and then we have transferable skills. And transferable skills are those skills that go from one thing to the next. You can use them in the classroom. You can use them in an extracurricular activity. You can use them in your family. You can use them in job A and then your second job. It goes along with you. And it's all those soft skills that can be transferred from one place to the next. So you want to give them some time to do the soft skills assessment. And then the third thing we've provided is what's called the why are you the right person? All right. To get a job, we really need to showcase to that employer that we're the right person for the job. So this one kind of combines the Breg Sheet, the thinking about those specific questions, as well as those soft skills assessment. So these are some typical questions that are often asked. And then it shows like how to answer it. What are you thinking about in that answer? What is that employer really wanting out of asking that question? So again, they're not going to get through it. We just don't have enough time, but give them another 2 to 3 minutes to kind of ping pong and think through these questions and how would they respond, connecting everything that we've talked with. Okay. Those are some of the elements that we've provided to help them prepare for the interview. The fourth step is the interview itself, right? So what we want to do is really spend about 15-ish minutes on the interview, and we would encourage you to do mock interviews. Now, if you've done JA Careers, the Legacy program, and you have your own method of how this has really worked well in your classroom, feel free to do it your way in showcasing the interview process. But what we have really found works the best is if you do a workshop model. So what I usually do is while the students are working on their soft skills assessment, I make a little staging area. So depending on what kind of desks or tables you have in your room, I either pull up 2 chairs. If I can have a desk, I'll stage it fully, but I put just a little mock area for us to participate. When I go to do the interview, I ask for a volunteer, and usually they're hesitant, but by the second one, there's multiple people who want to do it. If you kind of set up a safe space, they want to participate as you go. So you're just going to ask them 3 questions. So it's not a long, drawn out thing. If they do a really great job or a really horrible job, you're not committing too much to it, right? So I'm telling them that they're going to do, I need one person to do 3 questions. The very first time I do it, I talk through the whole process of the interview, such as when does your interview start? I really emphasize it starts the moment you drive on the premise, right? There could be security cameras. People could be watching you while you're going into the establishment. The way you interact with the janitor in the hallway, the secretary at the front desk, all of those interactions matter. And so it starts the moment they're on the premise, not just the moment that you're introduced. You want to then talk about the introduction. What does a proper introduction look like or sound like? So talk through that in your first one. And then have the student sit down, and you're just going to ask them 3 questions. You're going to let them respond, and then you're going to do a coaching session, and you're going to ask the class, what are some of the things they did really well, and what are some of the things you could coach them on? And I always really overemphasize the bravery of the first person, right? It's intimidating to do this in front of your peers. What you're going to notice is we have provided those questions from the Why Are You the Right Person interview. So the questions would match if they did take a few minutes to think through their answers. That's where we're pulling the questions from, but feel free to bring your own questions. If you guys have from your own company a layer of questions that you would ask, feel free to use them. The other thing you want to do is establish what is the specific position you're hiring for. You can ask them if they have a preference, or you can just simply say a cashier at a grocery store, etc. You could pick something from your own business, whatever's appropriate for high school students. And that's what I do. I let them coach. Like I always, if students are coming up with something positive, there's always something that you can do, even if it wasn't the best interview ever. So I always make sure to do some shout outs, some of the positives, and then we can always pull out some coaching points as well. Then I simply ask for a second person to come up and do it. They are starting to see that it's not super bad. It's only 3 questions. And normally by this point, you're getting a little bit of momentum. So have a second student come up. Oftentimes you can get through 3, maybe even 4, depending on your time. You do want to make sure that you reserve enough time to talk through the rest of the process. So focus for about 15-ish minutes, watch your time in the classroom, do those mock interviews, and then make sure that you get through the 5th and 6th step as well. The 5th step we have identified as asking questions at the end of the interview. This is often a step that sometimes people get thrown off by, but almost always in an interview, they will ask you, do you have any questions for us? And you want to be prepared for that. You want to show interest. You really want to showcase some good questions. And so we've got some suggestions there. Again, talk from your own perspective about what might work well. Step 6 is send a thank you. This has changed a lot throughout the last 10 years as well. We used to always really emphasize that handwritten thank you note, which I definitely still think sets you apart and is an absolute key essential. If not a handwritten thank you card, please, please, please overemphasize that they need to send at least a thank you email, right? That's properly focused or addressed to that specific interviewer. So the importance of sending a thank you. From there, we would love if you could just retain the last few minutes to kind of summarize, to do a little mini graduation, a thank you for the students and the time that you had in the classroom. Please make sure that you emphasize any of the key points that you really want to highlight, and that you ask the students what were some of the highlights that they're going to take into their future. Thank you so much for taking the time to participate in Junior Achievement. Please make sure that you email Junior Achievement that you have completed all 3 sessions. Oftentimes the JA office will proactively send you an email in which you can reply to, but if we don't do that in a timely fashion, if you can send us a quick email just indicating all 3 sessions have been completed, we greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much. Enjoy your time with the students.